Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the legendary interviews series. I'm here today with Dakota from Dakota Abroad. This is a video and an interview that is long overdue because we're both very interested in language learning through card games. And I wanted to have him on today so we could talk, first of all, about his language learning background generally, but then we're going to get into specifically how we can improve our language learning through the card game Magic the Gathering. So Dakota, welcome. It's awesome to have you on. Could you tell us a little bit about your language learning background? How did you get started learning foreign languages?
So actually, the first language I was interested in learning wasn't technically a foreign language. When I was in third grade, I attempted to teach myself American Sign Language by getting books from the school library.
Interesting.
um, but ever since then, like in fifth grade, I wanted to take like a summer course to teach Spanish. My first like real serious thing was in high school. I started learning French. I did that for 4 years, and then I got my bachelor's degree in French. And while in university, I dabbled in 101 for I think 8 different languages, because I was also studying how to teach languages. So I figured the more that I experimented with, the more I would like understand the process of learning and teaching a language.
That's awesome. Wow, so many languages that you were experimenting with and testing out. That's amazing. So, where does your language learning stand nowadays? What languages are you sort of actively studying? And what's your study routine like if you have one, or how do you like to study?
Well, honestly, right now it's not that great because I've got a bunch of mental health things going on. But hopefully that'll be sorted out soon. I'm actually going to go to a doctor next week. But the languages I'm kind of working on now are American Sign Language still. I just bought a course online for that.
Man, cool.
Japanese Sign Language, Japanese, because I currently live
Wow.
in Japan. I'm sort of maintaining my French a little bit by like watching French TV shows on YouTube every now and then. And I want to move to Germany in a few years, so I'm working on German as well.
Uh-huh. Cool, cool. That's very
But
eclectic, but
yeah,
it sounds fun. It really sounds fun. When
but
you I just thinking generally across all these years you've been involved with language learning, do you tend to study in a very habitual way, or is it more kind of free form, like whatever strikes your mood, you get into, you look at that, you study it like that way for a little while? Is it different from day to day, week to week, or do you have a sort of set way that you go about it?
I have found that trying to make a schedule doesn't work for the way my brain works.
Mm.
So my partner thinks that I have ADHD, which is one of the reasons we're going to the doctor next week. And I'm always jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing. I get like really obsessed with one thing for a little bit, and then I jump to something else. And so I schedules don't work for me. Keeping with the similar things don't work for me.
Mhm.
I'm always trying something new. I experiment with different apps, with different ways to learn a language, different languages. Sometimes I have trouble sticking to what I want to learn,
Uh-huh.
so I haven't had a lot of habitual stuff in my language learning routine, except when I was in school because I had to, do the homework when it was assigned. So I had to do that.
Uh-huh.
But when I'm doing things for myself, it's always just been, what do I feel like doing today?
Mhm. That's really interesting. Sometimes I tell myself and I advocate to others, study in such a way today that you will be interested and excited to learn tomorrow,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, it's especially for those of us who are doing it as a hobby, right? I see
Yeah.
so many people putting a lot of stress on themselves. This is a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. Like do whatever you need to do to make it fun, to make it exciting. Sure, having a schedule can be helpful for some people, and sticking to it is helpful, and having your goals laid out. But at the same time, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely got to examine your motivations and let your methods match your motivations. If you don't, like you said, if it is a hobby,
Mhm.
and it's not like you have an upcoming test or it's required for a job or you're not going to be traveling to that country next month or whatever, then your language learning can be more fun, a little more organic, a little bit more how you feel that day, that moment. That's more how I tend to study too. Let it be more natural and follow my curiosity of the day, my interest of the day.
Yeah. I'm a big advocate for combining your hobbies with your language learning, whatever
Mhm.
those hobbies may be.
Mhm. I like that way too. I've done that for a while now. Yeah, that's cool. Well, guys, the reason I asked Dakota to come on is because we're going to get more specifically into Magic the Gathering and how to learn languages through cards. I wanted that to be a specific focus for us today, because Dakota, his channel is great for language learning, and he talks about how he learns languages and what he's up to there. So you can find more about that there. But I want to get into an area that he's really dominating on YouTube, and he has some specific expertise in, and it relates to this channel. It relates to what I'm doing here. So, Dakota, could you tell us about when you first encountered foreign language cards, maybe as you were collecting? I don't know if you were playing with them very early on, but then later, when did you start to actually practice with them? I mean, actually, just now I'm being ADHD. So just a moment ago, you were saying unite your hobbies.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what we're getting into here, because we have the hobby of card gaming. So when did it become something that you actually integrated into your language learning practice as well?
Well, so I first became interested in foreign language cards. I realized it was a thing when I was like 7 years old. I was playing Pokemon. There were a couple of sets out, but my dad was always a huge fan of sports, and he bought and sold sports cards and magazines and stuff. And so he went to card shows in malls and stuff where people buy, sell, and trade these things. And while most people there are doing sports things, there are also people who do things like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, a Yu-Gi-Oh, all those things. So when I was a kid, my dad, I still have them actually, got me Japanese Pokemon cards.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was like, this is really cool. And I was already trying to teach myself some languages. And so I had no idea how to decode this, but I really wanted to. And
Uh-huh.
then I would say probably in high school is when I started actually using them. I was using them in what I would consider the least successful way possible. I was reading the cards and trying to understand the cards, which in my opinion is the very first step. It's like barely you don't really learn too much from the cards themselves. You learn from playing and talking to people while you play. But in high school, that's where I was starting.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Cool. Yeah. I think of some of the first foreign cards I was seeing too were Japanese Pokemon cards. They seemed so exotic, and they were like driving kids crazy. So I had a few Japanese Pokemon cards. I think those were the first foreign uh, game cards that I ever saw. But you speak to a really important point there, which is when you see it when you're young, it sort of plants a seed of curiosity and interest in you that could be cultivated later, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's neat. Um, so what would you say are some of the advantages of learning with foreign language cards? You alluded to one just now. Well, you brought up two ways just now, which is sort of translating the card, trying to read the card, and then also the conversation which goes on around the table, which I also think is really important. So can you talk about some of the advantages of learning languages in this way? Because I think what some people, a lot of language learners might have on their mind is, and I've faced this, as you know, because I'm trying to sell the card games, is they say, well, my goal is to learn a language. Coming to sit at the table and playing a game, isn't that taking away from a more focused effort to learn the language? I could devote like 30 minutes or an hour of focused study over here. Why should I play a game? Is that distracting me a little bit? Is it going to hinder my progress? What would you say to that? What would you say are the advantages overall? Why should people do this?
Well, there are actually two things I want to talk a little about here. And one is first why I think translating the cards is actually a very bad way about going about it. Well, it is helpful. It's the worst way to use the cards, I think, personally, and also some of the benefits of using the cards. And so first, why I don't actually like translating the cards, and it's one of the reasons, like I said, you have to translate the cards, you have to read the cards to use them. So it
Yeah.
is an important first step, but that's where a lot of people sort of want to stop. They think, I've read the card, I know these words now, that's great, but what the cards say is very limited, very limited. And that's one of the reasons I really enjoy your game, Language Guardians, because the cards themselves don't have the vocabulary on them. You use them to create your own sentences.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the really good, useful practice comes from. When you are reading the card, it's very limited. There's only what is on the card. And so, yes, you need to understand the card, but the actual application of that knowledge and using it to create things is what I think is really helpful, which is why I have a couple of games here. They're like story games.
Yes.
Making that story is much more helpful.
Yeah.
And that coming together and talking to people is what's really helpful. This is my second point here, about card games, any games in general. You're sitting down at a table, you're talking to people, you're having fun, you're using your target language, hopefully, to play the game. And this includes things like talking about the rules, explaining what you're doing. If you're doing a storytelling game like Gloom or Once Upon a Time or even Dungeons and Dragons, the entire thing is just telling a story in your target language, right? So you're getting all of that output. And of course, there's this argument between input and output. But when we get down to it, there's not a lot of really good ways to practice things like pragmatics, how to be polite to people in a language. And I feel like practicing things with your output is a really good way to do that. There's things about sitting down and talking to people. One of the things I like to stress about using Magic the Gathering is that essentially the game in and of itself, whether or not you're learning it as a language tool, is about coming together with people. It's Magic the Gathering. You know, there's big events and stuff. And everything surrounding the game, that conversation, talking about what's happening in the game, talking to people about the story of the game, because, you know, most games have flavor to them and things like that. That connection that you're making with people is what really cements the language in your head.
Yeah, those vivid conversations around the game and the tangents, which sometimes can be very useful because you're kind of cementing in different associations and connections. And when you play with people from different cultural backgrounds, they can let you in on some really unique, subtle points, you know?
Yeah. And like you said, coming from different cultural backgrounds, one of the really hard things to learn, especially from a book, are things like the pragmatics of a language, knowing when you can interrupt someone, knowing how to end a conversation or start a conversation, or how to correct someone. There was a time when I was playing a pre-release event with Magic the Gathering, and someone was using his card the wrong way. And I was like, oh God, I have to explain this in Japanese. And those are things you're not going to get from a book. And even if they explain how to do it, you're really not going to understand it until you do it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. There's a lot in the conversation that's going on that's not, you don't really encounter in textbooks and courses in the classroom. It's really tough. It's closer to life, you know?
Exactly.
When you're gaming and talking around the table, it's very close to basically having a conversation on the street or something. Yeah, I really enjoy that. And I've enjoyed playing my games with people from different countries and different languages and just letting them teach me about their language through the games. Now, what's the flip side? Every coin has two sides. What would you say are the disadvantages and some of the misconceptions people have? What are some of our own blind spots, do you think, people like you and me, that we'd prefer to not see?
Well, gaming communities in general can sometimes be hard to get into. You know, there's this stereotype of communities being very, very gatekeepy. And while this isn't always true, it definitely can be true. In the United States, I feel like when I was playing Magic the Gathering, I'd go to the store. There were a decent amount of women, for example, but there were mostly men. Here in Japan, I go to a tournament center that holds 200 people, and I've seen 3 women there. So it can be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, I think. There's a certain stereotype that comes with these games. And again, stereotypes aren't always true, but there is some sort of uncomfortable feeling sometimes when you go to these things. The sort of culture around gaming and games can be a little bit tricky. And part of me also thinks that what you said earlier is in some ways true, that playing a game can be distracting sometimes. Because there are people, Magic the Gathering again, who don't speak the same language and they can still play the game together. They don't have to communicate. So you can sort of go on autopilot. You still have to make that effort to practice your language. Just because you're playing the game, the cards in your target language, your opponent only speaks your target language, you still don't have to talk to play. So it's not like a magic bullet. You still have to work for it.
Mm-hmm. Great points. I can tell you really have thought deeply about this. This is really excellent insight. And another point I would like to add, which kind of surprised me, was we tend to assume that playing a game is going to help to alleviate social anxiety or shyness. But I actually had some people tell me that no, it doesn't. It doesn't help them actually. So they actually still, you know, to meet other people, to get past the gatekeepers, like you say, or to organize a game night and maybe host people at their house, and there still can be some shyness and social anxiety issues for people wrapped up in that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up, because that's actually, I don't know if I've told you this before, but I'm actually wanting to eventually get my PhD studying linguistics, second language acquisition, focusing on game use. And one of the things I want to focus on are things like pragmatics, but also how we can use games to boost confidence and make people feel more comfortable. Because generally speaking, I think using a focal point as a tool like the game, you can distract yourself from the fact that you're using your target language. And so you can relieve some of that. Again, all theory, I haven't had the time to study it in depth yet, but I want to. I believe that it can help relieve some of the anxiety of learning a language, but if you still have that social anxiety of playing games with people, of course, it's still frustrating, but there is some information out there about psychology using games like Dungeons and Dragons to help people with their social anxiety and things like that. So I want to sort of like dip into the psychology of how people use it for emotional problems, like anxiety and things like that, behavioral problems, because people use it to teach children, you know, social norms and stuff like that. And I think all of that goes really well with language learning as well. So.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. Well said, and I hope you can pursue that path. That's really cool. Now, this next question, it might be hard to do this in a short span of time, and Dakota has much more in-depth information on his channel, which you guys should definitely check out. But I wonder if you could share with us one or two specific ways that we can use Magic the Gathering for foreign language learning. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I saw a recent video where you showed the tool of the Scryfall, right?
Yes.
And you showed the translations. You could translate any card you wanted to anytime. And I know you show how you can print off cards to practice without buying them and things like that. Can you tell us a specific method or a tactic that we could actually try?
So if you want to get into playing Magic the Gathering in your target language, well, I do think that the best way to do it is to play with other people. You still have to be comfortable with the language first. So the best thing to do would be to start off playing Magic the Gathering Arena, which is a free-to-play online version of Magic the Gathering, because you can switch it to every language the game is printed in, except Chinese, if I remember correctly. Everything else is there. So fortunately, there's no Chinese. I wish they'd put it on there. And so that's a good way to familiarize yourself with the vocabulary, because like I said, that's the first step. That's not where you should stop. You still need to be able to read the cards and use them. So if you want to get into it, make sure that you can play a few games, maybe do a few drafts on Arena with the card set to your target language before you go and talk to people, because you don't want to slow the game down with a person in real life too much, because they'll get frustrated with you.
So just to repeat again for the people who are watching, try the Magic the Gathering Arena. It's free, it's online. You can download the application to your computer. It's available in any language that the game is printed in. Do you have any idea how many languages it's available in now? I guess most of the major ones, right?
They often say that it's printed in 11 languages, but 2 of them are Chinese, traditional and simplified. So 10-ish languages with 2 different scripts for one of them.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend it. My younger brother was reaching out to me to try it. So I tried it for the first time just a few months ago, and I really liked it. And I was a bit skeptical at first because I'm used to playing with the actual cards in my hand around the table with friends. I felt like
Mhm.
I was going to miss that. And I didn't know if I really wanted to be playing online, but it was great because I got to play with my younger brother. So here you go. You can connect with people across the world. You can have their video up with them, talking to them and practicing your foreign language. I thought it was a really slick application. It's not
Mhm.
hard to learn. You can learn, can pick it up really quickly.
Yeah. Unless you already have friends who play, you will have to play with strangers, and there's no chat function with that. So that is unfortunate. So as soon as you feel comfortable with the game, the next step I would say would be to jump immediately into playing in paper at a store. Find your local game store, and they always host game nights, assuming that where you ever live currently is safe with COVID measures and all that, of course.
Mhm.
But yeah, so practice on the game, jump right into paper if you can, and if you can't, find someone you know, like your brother, who you can play with face to face with a webcam.
Cool. Now, I might have cut you off there. Was there anything you wanted to say more in the way of specific things people could do?
No, I think those are a good first two steps. Learn the game, get comfortable with it before you play with a real life person face to face. And then once you're comfortable with it, immediately jump into that because that's where the gold mine of
Yeah.
language content is.
Yeah. Awesome. So, as I mentioned earlier, Dakota has a wealth of really well-made videos about learning foreign languages with Magic the Gathering. I gotta say kudos to you and props to you for the effort you've put into them. I
Thank you.
watched a few of them over the years, and today I was digging into them more before the interview. And I knew you had made a lot, but I didn't know you had made that many videos. And a lot of them I could see that it took you a lot of time and great editing, and you put pictures of the cards in there and everything. And you really give specific advice for how to approach them as a language learner who wants to improve their languages. Um, so for someone who's interested in this, what one or two videos would you recommend to them to go watch first?
So if I were to suggest two videos specifically for Magic the Gathering, the first one I would suggest would be, it's titled Language Learning with Games, and in parentheses, Magic the Gathering, for example, which is all about how you can sort of start learning. Some of the things I said here, where you can start on Arena and then move towards playing in person. And then the one that I believe sparked you reaching out to me for the interview, which is apparently my video titles are very similar because it's Language Learning with Magic the Gathering Tips. And this is and this one is about how you can use the different formats, the different styles of play, whether you want to do sealed events, whether you want to do drafting or playing constructed decks, and how I would go about choosing which one of those you want to do.
Mhm.
So
Great. Yeah, I always wonder about those keywords and titles myself because I've made like 100 videos on language learning with card games. Like, here's another
yeah.
one. Um, Now, you have a playlist for this, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Multilingual Multiverse? Was that the name of the?
Yes, I think that was a playlist that I have stopped updating.
Yeah, you really got to update that. I think I was on there today, but I didn't see some of maybe your newest ones in there. I think that's great. And you got to direct people to that. Put that on your YouTube channel homepage because that is an awesome resource. So, guys, you can check out his playlist as well. There's a lot of great videos in there. Um, where do you prefer people tune into you on social? Where are you most active? Where would you direct people to follow you and support what you're doing?
On every social media account I have, I'm just at the LL Lounge, the LL Lounge meaning the Language Learning Lounge.
Okay.
The one I'm most active on would be Twitter, but I've really been getting into TikTok lately. I have
Hey.
Instagram, but it's mostly just pictures of my cats and of food. So, yeah, that's just, if you want to find me, see if I have at the LL Lounge, and if I don't, I'm not on that social media site.
Okay, at the LL Lounge. Got it. Now, before we go, what would be your biggest piece of advice or something that you want language learners who are watching to take away? How, well, I'll let you speak.
I would say that especially if you're doing this as a hobby, if you, because there's so many of us who are doing it as a hobby and they stress ourselves out, just have fun. Stop stressing yourself out. That's not the point of this. We're doing this for fun. So make sure you're having fun. Make sure you're combining your other hobbies. Do whatever you need to do to make it fresh and new and exciting. Don't listen to what other people are saying about what you have to do, because fun fact, in life, you don't have to do anything. You can do whatever. There'll be consequences for not doing some things, but you don't have to do it. So do whatever you think is most fun, even if the most efficient way of learning a language is, if it's not fun to you, don't do it. It should be about having fun. If you like the least efficient way to learn a language, if you want to sleep on your language learning notes at night, go ahead and do it. I don't suggest that, but do what's fun for you. Don't do what everyone else is telling you is the best.
Awesome. You heard it from the man himself, Dakota from Dakota Abroad. Guys, there's going to be cards in this video, links down below in the description, so you can find what we've been talking about here today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all back here next time at Legendary Language Learner. Bye for now. See you.